Welcome to this week's episode of the Happy Psychic Podcast. I am your host, your guiding light, Gemma Lonsdale, and this week it's all about me. There are so many of you that have been asking for my own personal story and eager to understand my own spiritual path and how my own development all has come together, and that's what I'm focusing on today. I want to share with you as much of myself as possible, and I hope that you enjoy. I'm so pleased to be here doing this episode. There are so many of you that have been asking me questions and get so curious about my background and how I ended up on the path that I'm on, that I thought it was really important actually that I share that little bit of myself with you so you know what I have come from and what my journey was like and the effort that has actually went into developing my connection. But at the same time, there are so many of you there that come and say to me, I really wish that I had a gift. I wish that I could do what you do. And you absolutely can. This isn't an impossible task. So I thought that actually doing this episode would be a really good way for me to showcase that with you. So whenever I think back to childhood, there are so many mediums out there that talk about being naturally gifted mediums, naturally born mediums. I was born with my gift. I've always seen spirit. I've always connected to spirit. And really that wasn't my experience. That's not really what I have experienced as a person. Whenever I think back to my childhood, I can remember times when I knew things, but I can't remember ever seeing spirit. And I do see spirit now, but I don't ever remember being aware that I was gifted in any way. There were definite times when I had intuitive nudges on my path. There was one particular time when I was reading a book. Whenever we were at school, we had like a library. It was before those days of Kindles and things like that, and really before the internet had really taken a hold. And we used to have this book club that we would get like a paper thing from school, and it would have a list of all these different books in it, and we could order one if we wanted, and that was ours to keep. And I had actually done that. And one of the books that I had read, actually, it was called The Good Son, and I was actually reading the book and I really enjoyed it. And I can remember just suddenly thinking to myself, oh, this would be a really good movie. And I was even thinking like Elijah Wood and there was somebody else, they would be perfect for playing this part. And I can just remember a period of time after that. Now, bear in mind, I was a kid. I can remember a period of time after that where I remember running into the kitchen, into my parents. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like happened. They're making a movie. I knew I had this thought. I knew that they would be perfect for that role. And I can remember that. But at the time, my parents were just so busy with life that they didn't really think anything of it. It was just like, oh, very good. And I didn't really think anything of it either as a child. I didn't think, oh, okay, well, I must have some spiritual gift. I think I probably didn't really even know a lot about spirituality at that stage. So on I continue through life. And I definitely would say that I was a good reader of people. That's what I would have said was one of my strengths. I was a good reader of people, but again, I wasn't really putting that down to being spiritually gifted in any way. And whenever I went into the corporate world, my first proper job really was as a trainee recruitment consultant. So I joined a big corporate. They put me through, all of this really structured sales training. I had to go through their academy. And then I was sort of let loose and graduated up through the ranks within the recruitment world. And there was one particular time, well, several times that I can talk of. We used to do this thing called blind slots. And what that meant was that a client would come to us and say, right, this is the position I have to fill. And we would be the ones responsible for doing the interviewing and the shortlisting. So it was like headhunting in a way, where we had the complete remit over who was actually interviewed for that position, and we would have went and found candidates suitable for it and then lined them up for interview, and then just told the client of ours, the company that was hiring, okay, so these are the 4 or 6 people that you're interviewing on this date at these times for this position. And I can remember I used to know who was going to get the job. And I used to say to my boss, this person's going to get the job. And I maybe hadn't even interviewed them myself, but I just knew. And I maybe would have interviewed somebody and said, yes, this person's going to get the job. And he would have took a look at their CV or their resume and been like, don't be so ridiculous, Gemma. No, absolutely not. They're not even going in for an interview. And if there was a a chance for to maybe get them in for an interview. If we had somebody drop out last minute, I would have been keeping that person warm and, fingers crossed. And it was always them that got the interview. I was very rarely wrong. And I can even remember a girl that I was actually friends with, and I had been looking for a position for myself at the time, and I had seen a job that would have been perfect for her. She was in recruitment with me, but she was multilingual and she really wanted to get out of the recruitment agency and the boutique agency side of it. And I had actually seen a position with an education company that wanted to hire somebody to actually recruit students, international students for them. And I had seen the job and I had said to her, "This is your job." And she didn't get the job. And I was like, "No, this is wrong. I'm broken. Something's not right." And because we had worked alongside each other for so long, and she knew how accurate I was with, my sort of like my predictions of people that were going to get positions, she was a bit baffled, and she said herself, "It does feel like it's a little bit wrong." And what happened actually in that particular instance, she actually contacted them and she just reiterated again, how eager she was on that position. I think she'd got down to the final two at interview stage, and obviously was devastated whenever she was told that they were going with another candidate. And what actually happened was, it turned out that the person that they had offered the job to didn't even respond to them, didn't even reject the position. They just ghosted them, I guess we would label that as in today's terms. And she got the job. They offered her the position and she got the job. So she was going to get that job anyway, even though on the appearance of it at the start, it would seem like she had been rejected because they had rejected her. But they came back and offered her the position in the end. So I've had a lot of things like that have happened over my career. But again, I didn't think to myself that I was gifted. This was just something that I seen as being me being a good reader of people. So I continued with my corporate career. I just continued going down this path, still completely oblivious to the spiritual gift that I had, thinking, I'm just a good reader of people. I'm intuitive, not thinking anything more of it. And I would say that I was quite skeptical that there was an existence. It's quite funny because on one hand, I really believed that there was a higher power. I had this belief that there was definitely something, but I had never really witnessed it myself. If someone was to say to me, "Oh, do you believe that your grandma still exists now that she's crossed over?" I said I would like to think so, but I hadn't had the proof that would really bring that through for me before. Up until obviously I was on this journey. So I was a bit of a skeptic. I wanted to believe though. So I was definitely on the fence somewhat, and I really needed some affirmations to come through. Now, whenever my daughter was born, and she's 9 now, she's just about to turn 10, so this has gone back quite a while. And I actually went for a reading. Now, I had been very, very curious about all of this for a very long time, but I was always quite scared as well. I think one of the things that we get scared about is getting bad news or hearing something that we shouldn't hear or that we don't want to hear, or being fearful that there was something bad that was going to happen or that we would bring about bad luck. I grew up in Northern Ireland, which is really surrounded by religion a lot. Religion is still, certainly was very prominent whenever I was younger. So to get involved in this sort of stuff was very, very uncertain. A lot of people would have said, "No, you don't want to touch anything like that. That's the devil's work. It's dangerous." So there was many sort of opinions like that would have put you off. However, I was about 30. I think, just after my daughter was born, I had just turned 30. So I was 30 and I went for a reading. I actually went back to Northern Ireland for a short trip because I live in England now and I have done since I was 21, I think. And I went back to Northern Ireland to show off, obviously, my little bundle of joy, my daughter. And I booked a reading with a lady who did mediumship. and I wasn't sure what to expect. And she sat down. Now I had booked it through Facebook, so she'd access to my like Facebook profile and everything. And I sat down with her and she gave me a reading. And first of all, she was talking about traveling between Newcastle, or traveling between England and Northern Ireland, or England and, Scotland and Northern Ireland. And I was like, well, of course, she can get that from my Facebook. And she even had her laptop sitting next to her. So I thought to myself, yeah, she maybe has my profile or some notes sitting there. So I was definitely dubious of her gift in that regard. And it was no disrespect to her. It was just that was the position that I was coming from at that particular time. I wasn't sure whether I trusted this. Has she done her research on me? Is that how she gets her information? So I was taking it all with a pinch of salt. And in fact, when she said that to me, I just stood and shook my head and I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. And she was like, oh, this is very strange. And one of the things that she actually told me in that reading, and it's the one thing that has really stood out to me because I didn't take any notes or anything. So it was the one thing really that did stand out to me. And she told me that I was clairvoyant and that I had just never used my gift. I'd never tapped into it. And I just thought to myself, like, what a load of tosh. How ridiculous is this? If I was clairvoyant, I would know. If I was seeing dead people, I would know about it. So I really thought, oh, she probably tells everybody that, oh, you're all gifted and you're just not using it yet. So I came away a little bit disheartened, but it definitely had captured my curiosity. And I feel like when I went into that session, I was really hopeful that I would get some sort of concrete evidence that would have me a believer. I really wanted to be walking out of that room a believer, and I didn't. So I was a bit disheartened, but my curiosity was piqued. And it was a short while after that I actually went to see somebody else in the north of England, and I think it was in Sunderland, actually, if anybody is familiar with the geography. And this man, he was an elderly man and he had been doing it for many, many years, and he had quite a good reputation in that area. So I went along to see him and he had this big cassette player that he recorded it for me and gave me the reading. I think I actually gave it to me on CD, but it looked like it was something from the 1980s, what he was recording on, bless him. And again, I still came away just not sure if it was real. There wasn't enough there to make me go, wow, this is definitely it. That was definitely my grandma. There just wasn't enough information there. However, there definitely was some bits of information that he brought through that did make sense, but there just wasn't enough. There wasn't enough there for me. So off I went again, and then I had another reading. So I've just been on this journey of curiosity, and I did have another reading with somebody else who actually had come to the house that I was living in at the time, and the messages that he brought through, like he got some names and everything, and I recorded it on my phone, but I still wasn't 100% sure that it was definitely real. I wasn't sure. So he had given me some really good bits of information, but it just didn't resonate. He was looking around the room and he said, I'm seeing you moving house. And at that particular time, I wasn't thinking of moving house, but it was a short while after that I think only about 2 or 3 months, and it hadn't clicked with me until a few years ago, actually. But it was a couple of months after that me and my husband had actually decided to separate. So I was moving because of that. So he was saying things that didn't make sense to me at that time, but it later did make sense to me. But at the same time, I still wasn't feeling like I was gifted in any way. I didn't really feel like I had a deep spiritual connection. So I think it's really important for people to be aware that I was not on this spiritual path. This isn't something that has always been a part of my life. I really questioned this. I have fought against it for the majority of my adult years. And really it's only through trauma and things like that my path has opened up to me, and I have ended up going down this direction. So if we think back to whenever I was in my early 30s, if you had said to me that I was going to go on to be a psychic medium and making predictions and all of this, I would have laughed at you. It was just so illogical for me. I was very firmly on my career path in the corporate world. I was very embedded in the materialistic world. I was very, focused on my car. I had like a really nice car. It was like a dream car for me. Um, Nice holidays. I had money in the bank. I really liked my life. I liked the material version of my life. However, whenever my husband and I actually separated, I found out a week later that I had breast cancer. I had found a lump, and I really expected at that age that it would be nothing. But whenever I went for my appointment, they actually did an ultrasound, and they were able to tell me that day, look, this is definitely cancer. We just don't know what type of cancer. So I had to wait to get my results from the biopsy to know exactly what we were dealing with at that particular time. And I had just taken delivery of my brand new BMW, like M Sport. So it was a I had spec'd the car myself. This was just everything that I had ever wanted. And I had taken delivery of it the day before, and I sat in it and I cried. And I just thought to myself, I don't even know if I'm going to still be alive at the end of this lease. So it was quite a scary time for me. Um, so that really started my life going on a journey that I hadn't completely expected to go down. Here I was, a single parent, on the singles market. I think I was on Tinder and everything at that point. I thought, well, I can just continue to date. I can date my way through this. I will distract myself. I will keep myself uplifted. And I, obviously was facing cancer treatment. I didn't know what was going to happen even around chemo and things like that at that stage, but I knew that there would be some sort of treatment involved. And yeah, I was just distracting myself. That is basically what I tried to do. And the universe really was very adamant that I was going to turn inwards at that stage. So it was orchestrating things on my path that were causing disruption, that were causing upset, that were really forcing me to turn inwards and start asking some of those deep questions that we ask ourselves. It had me evaluating like my past relationships. So it wasn't even just my marriage, it was other relationships that I had, and they had failed. And I had been in this cycle of getting with someone, thinking that that was what I wanted, and then ending up wanting to leave. So there was some sort of inherent cycle within me as a person. And I started to realize it's me that's the common denominator here. I can't be blaming my partners, it's me. So am I choosing the wrong people? Is it my choices that are wrong? Or actually do I need to change here? And that was one of the really profound moments that I experienced on my journey. And at that stage, I was still in the corporate world. I was crying every night, talking to my chimney breast, trying to figure out my life and to figure out this mess that I seemed to be in. And it was a really uncomfortable time. And I knew at the time that I was going through a spiritual awakening. I didn't even know what a spiritual awakening was, but I just intuitively knew. And it was probably through claircognizance, which is where we receive information without even knowing how we've received it. It just comes out of thin air. It's like those light bulb moments. So I was really aware that actually I just knew that it was a spiritual awakening, even though I didn't know what a spiritual awakening was. And I was actually going through a dark night of the soul, and I was purging. So all of these tears and these questions that I was asking myself, this was me purging all of that information and getting all of this stuff up to the surface, getting rid of all the rotten things. So I've really been on my healing journey for quite a long time, and it's not finished. I'm just much more aware of it now than what I was before. But my healing journey certainly isn't finished at this stage. However, it definitely has got easier, and I've come more to terms with that, because I realize whenever stuff is coming up to the surface, or whenever the universe is giving me a shake or a kick, or boxing me around the ears, whatever it's doing to me at that particular time, the challenges and the hurdles that are on my path are there to help me. They're not there as a punishment, they're there to help us get those challenging parts up to the surface in order for us to move on to something better, and for us to be a better person, for us to enjoy life more, for us to gain a different perspective. It's all for our benefit. We just really need to look for the lesson in all of those experiences that we have, because there's always a lesson and there's always improvement that needs to be made. So I went through that, and it was around that time that I really started to feel like the universe was talking to me. I felt like the universe was communicating with me. Now, not the same way as what I get that at the moment. It was more through things happening like synchronicities, strangest coincidences. Things just seemed to be falling into place. And then all of a sudden, I started to feel like they were falling apart again. So it really felt like there was something going on, something that was orchestrated from a higher power, from a higher level. And it definitely did lead me to question my sanity on several occasions. There was one particular evening that I was actually sitting in my living room, and I can remember wondering to myself, should I actually be contacting, a doctor? Do I need to perhaps seek some medical help? And it was quite a scary time and quite an uncomfortable time because you're going through something that people ridicule you for. If you start talking about this with family members or with friends that aren't spiritually connected or gifted in any way, it's not really the common thing that we experience in life. So people really started to ridicule me and laugh at me with certain things that I would have been coming out with, and you could sense the eye rolls at the end of the text messages. And, it was the same within the workplace as well. I was in the corporate world still, and any mention of things like this, it was a bit like, okay, right, whatever, Gemma. So it was definitely a challenging time, without a doubt. And that coupled with then what I started to experience, I was really thinking, okay, maybe I'm not experiencing anything spiritual. Maybe I am having a psychotic episode. And I actually googled that. And there was just so happened to be a TED talk on somebody that had talked about spiritual awakenings and spiritual emergences, and how they are so linked with psychotic episodes. And he was talking about this. So that definitely gave me some reassurance. But I really didn't know at that time if maybe I did need medication. And I was sort of thinking to myself, do I call the doctor? Do I call a psychic? um, and I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to call a psychic. I think I called one of those psychic lines. And I think I was really hoping that she was going to reconfirm some of this for me. Almost reconfirm what I was experiencing at that time without me telling her. And I thought, well, if I can get that as confirmation, I'll definitely trust this, and I'll sort of think that I am saying I don't need any medication or anything like that. So I had quite a few experiences along those lines where I was really questioning my sanity. And there was actually a girl that I had known through work, and we hadn't worked together, but she had been a customer of ours, or she had worked for a customer of ours that we had done some work for quite a while before with one of the organisations that I worked with. And I had seen her update her LinkedIn profile, and I had got the alert on my email, and for some reason, I just looked and I thought, she's going through the same thing. She's going through the same thing as me. And I reached out to her, and straight away she says, I'm having a spiritual awakening. And I was just like, oh my goodness, thank God. And we started talking, and we were able to build a bridge. We met for coffee. And we were just meeting for one coffee, and we ended up sitting together for, like, I think it was all day. I think I was there until like tea time or something, and I had to just say, right, okay, I need to go now. I've been here since like 9:30. Um, we had so much to talk about. So she was having very similar experiences to me. There was the ear ringing, there was things, just weird things, unusual things, where we just knew that we were on a spiritual path, but there wasn't really that much that was happening yet, or it didn't appear to be. I hadn't been seeing, spirits or anything like that. What I did do though, I bought myself some tarot cards. I had bought myself a couple of interesting stories about that. Um, I had bought myself a deck of tarot cards, and I had bought myself a guidebook that would help me understand those tarot cards. And in true Gemma style, I definitely can have a tendency to grip on hard to things, and it's definitely been one of the things that tearing their hair out with me. I was sitting looking at my guide now, and she's saying that she's got bald spots because she's been pulling on her hair that much. I definitely have a tendency to grip hard onto things, and definitely form attachments to people and situations and to certain outcomes. So it's one of the big things that Spirit have been teaching me on my healing journey, and I'm very, very aware of it. So at least I'm aware of it. It has improved. We're maybe, not 100% of the way there, but I feel like I've come a long way from what I was. Um, I had met this guy, and I had met him and just felt this hit of energy. It just felt like it was energy slapping me in the face whenever we met. And I was like, he's the one. He's my person. I'm supposed to be with him. And we had this wonderful day together, this wonderful date, from my point of view. And then he wasn't interested in having another date, but he wanted to stay friends, which I thought, well, this is really odd. This is really strange. And so I thought, well, I'll stay friends, then maybe something can blossom from it. And basically, I was sitting doing tarot cards, not repetitively or anything. It's not like I did them. It's not like I did them every day. Oh God, thinking back to it, it's a bit nuts, really. But I would have done tarot cards, trying to figure out, like, well, what is going on with this? Like, I kept feeling like he was interested, but he wasn't making progress towards me. I felt like I couldn't have got it wrong. There was too many things for me to have got it completely wrong. But then I thought, well, maybe I did get it wrong. However, I was doing these tarot cards, and then all of a sudden this man appeared to me, and this was the first time that I was very, very aware that I had connected to someone in spirit. There was a man and there was a lady. And this man came forward. He was telling me all about his connection with this guy that I was interested in, and telling me all of these things. And I actually messaged the guy and I said, like, there's this man, this is what he looks like. He's like, that's my uncle. So I was like, oh my gosh. So that was very interesting that happened. That was my very first experience. And then I didn't get anything really like that for quite a while after that. So that was very surreal. Um, the next thing that I started to really experience, which was quite a few months on, was I was getting visions of things. So I would have used the card. The card was really like a focal point for me. Whenever we're connecting in with spirit, it's very important that we get our brain trained to be able to get quickly into that meditative state. And that can be quite a challenge to get into. So whenever we use the cards, if we have a soft gaze and we're looking at the cards, suddenly we might find that our gaze is drawn to something, or it will be part of the card and the imagery will lift off and start to form an image and a symbolic image for us. And that symbolism could be a pot being stirred, or it could be a person, or it could be a hand gesture, or some sort of body language. That's the way that spirit communicate with us. So I would have been able to get images that way, not necessarily know exactly what they meant, but I used to be able to get images. So that was really me starting to understand the symbolism that I was receiving through from spirit. So I worked along with the cards and received the symbolism and imagery that way for a while. I was able to ask one question, pull a card, and receive the answer. Even if the message on that card didn't correlate, the image that spirit gave me would have made sense in connection to what I had asked. And I would have asked for other people, and me and this girl that I had made friends with, again, we would have sat doing this together. She was into the pendulum, I was really into the cards, and we really went on a little bit of a development journey together. And there was things that I was seeing for her. I would have said, I'm seeing you lifting the grate in the back garden. There's like water everywhere. And she was like, oh, I don't know what that is. And then the next day her garden flooded because there was a blockage in the drain. So things like that were very, very profound. I was getting confirmation very quickly. So it really enabled me to start to understand and have a greater interpretation of the symbolism that I was receiving. And then what started to happen as well from that was I started to hear spirit, and there was just words occasionally that were coming in. Then they started to become more prominent. So I was hearing more than what I was getting visions. It was almost like they had sort of flipped a switch, and I was working on my hearing. And then really as that progressed, I was using the two in tandem, and I was using the two things. And then I started to feel energy and emotions more in my body. And that's really how I progressed. So it didn't all start all at once. I had to work really hard and do a lot of obsessing and, meditating and tarot cards, and a lot of nothing happened for a very, very long time. I think, thinking back, I think it was definitely around the period of about a year before, the information really started to become clear for me. Um, but even then, it didn't really feel like I was getting lots of information, and I was still having to use the cards. And I was doing practice readings for people. I was very, very nervous, very underconfident, but at the same time, I was very determined. And it was my determination that really helped push me forward. So, any chance I got, I was doing readings for people. I was doing freebies on Facebook and different Facebook groups and asking people for feedback. And then I started with a telephone psychic line. And I think it was a week. I think I did a week. And it wasn't even a full week. I think I did about 6 hours. I did my minimum contracted hours. And I thought, like, gosh, I'm not really earning a lot doing this. So why don't I just do it for myself? I'll start off charging a little bit for the reading, and just sort of throw my energy into that. And that was what I did. I also felt very drawn to getting myself on TikTok. And I felt very drawn to starting a podcast. And I didn't have a microphone or anything at the time. I literally, my first podcast, whenever you listen back, it was me talking into a pair of Apple headphones. And I just figured out how to set the podcast up, and off I went. So that was really the start of my journey towards sort of putting myself out there a little bit. Now, I think people, whenever they see me now on TikTok and they listen to the podcast, they don't realize the bit that I had to come from, and the challenges and the hard part, and the embarrassment, and, being the laughing stock and the butt of the joke. And also coming from the corporate world where things like this aren't really understood, and from a family where this wasn't really something that was commonplace. There were definite challenges around that. And I was very concerned about how I would be perceived. My whole life up until that point was all about showing the world my success. When you think back to me having, the 3M, the BMW, that was all for other people's benefit. That was to show the world that I was here, that I was doing well, that, that was me seeking validation. I just hadn't realized that at the time. This was me trying to prove that I was good enough, that I had made it, really. And I had never thought that actually I didn't need to do that. So, my whole life and the decisions that I made, certainly at the start of my spiritual journey, were definitely heavily influenced by the perception that others would have of me. And I didn't want to cause myself any unnecessary embarrassment. So even whenever I started off a social media channel for my work, I didn't have my face attached to it. It wasn't me, it wasn't my name. I started off Guiding Light. That was the initial website that I had, and I had a logo. I didn't use my face or my picture or my name. I wasn't ready for that. And there was one particular day that I was posting something out, and I laugh about it now, but I had posted it out to my personal Instagram rather than my business. So that was obviously the universe's way of, saying, right, okay, it's time to come out now. We're pushing you out of the closet. And honestly, once I had taken that step, it was, honestly, it felt like a weight lifted, and it felt so much easier. So that was really the start of me starting to incorporate my face and my name into things a little bit more. And that really is the journey that I was on at the very beginning. But even whenever I went to post out my first TikTok, like, that was very frightening. I really was thinking to myself, I'm not made out for this. And I can remember someone saying to me, I had been a part of a spiritualist church for a short period whenever I was developing. And it was really before I was getting any information. I had started to realize that I was on a journey, although I wasn't receiving any information from spirit. And there was one of the mediums there said to me, I can see you on a stage. Your name's in light. You must want to be famous. And I was thinking, ugh, couldn't think of anything worse. I don't want to be famous. I don't want to be in front of people. Like, no, that's not me. I don't want to be on stage. And I really thought that was quite funny at the time. But then I realized this was spirit pushing me out, and I just hadn't realized that it was part of me and my authentic self and my authentic version of me, that was part of my path, because it just didn't resonate with where I was at that particular time. I think that that's a really good lesson for people whenever we think we know ourselves, but we really don't. There's so much about us that we don't know. And, you might think to yourself, no, I definitely don't want to do that. That's not me. But 5 years or even a year from now, you could be singing a completely different tune because you have worked on yourself, you have uncovered something new. There has been a desire that has come to the surface that you just weren't aware of in the first place. So it's a very, very interesting journey that I have been on for sure. Um, so, developing myself has been quite a challenge. Now, unfortunately, my cancer returned, and the operation and the treatment that I had the first time round wasn't enough to, prevent the recurrence of the cancer. And luckily, whenever me and my ex-husband separated, we have a great relationship. We co-parent, my daughter, and it all goes like a dream for 99.9% of the time, which is amazing. So he's been a great support for me on my journey as well, and it's just made life a lot more easier because we have that ease within our lives. Now, I had dropped my daughter off the day before I was due to go in to have my mastectomy, whenever my cancer returned, because they said there was no other option at that stage. They just had to take the breast tissue. So I was going in for my mastectomy, and I had dropped my daughter off, and I was sitting having a cup of tea with my ex, and he was like, oh, are you feeling okay about, all of those normal questions, and, giving support to people like you would normally. Now, up until that stage, I had always had to use my cards to deliver a reading. And that may have been having to use the cards from start to finish. Although at that point, I was using the cards to get me started. And this is where I think it's really important to appreciate the use of the tool and the benefits of having tools there. But it was at that part of my journey, I sat down, I was having that cup of tea with him, and all of a sudden his granddad appeared. And I had been very close to his granddad. I hold him very, very dear to me. And he just started giving me information, and I was telling my ex all of this stuff, and I I remember laughing because I kept showing me, his granddad in spirit kept showing me something where he was building something, but there was a flap. There was like this flap. It was like he couldn't figure out what this was for. And I was like, what is this? And we discussed, and he was like, I don't know. My ex isn't a believer. He's definitely curious, I think, now I'm down this path, but he wouldn't be a believer of stuff like this. And he actually said, hold on a minute. And he went and he brought me a Lego model. And he had been trying to figure out the design of a fireplace. And there was a flap on the side that where the wood would go for this wood burner stove that he was looking to build. So, it was things like that really piqued his curiosity. But anyway, I had that amazing day. I'd worked for like 30 minutes, I think, from start to finish, and give him all of this information about his life and what was coming up. And whenever I left, I actually went and I was driving along, and I really thought to myself, and this wasn't the first time that I had thought it, but I really thought to myself, I bet I can connect into a celebrity. And I had first thought this about 6 months before. And whenever I had thought to myself, well, what celebrity could I connect to? I had thought it would be Patrick Swayze. He was, I'm thinking to myself, well, who do I know that's dead? And it was Patrick Swayze. And I loved Dirty Dancing as a movie. So it was a bit of a natural choice, really. I had tried to connect with him before. Nothing had happened. And on that particular occasion, he came forward. Now, I was driving, and then I all of a sudden had Patrick Swayze in my mind's eye. And I thought to myself, well, this is a bit weird. I don't really know what to do now. I don't know what to say to you. Like, hi. So I had that. And then all of a sudden, somebody else came in alongside him on the screen. And it was Chester Bennington. Now, I didn't know Chester by name. I recognized him. I knew that he was in a band, but I didn't know his name. And I didn't actually know what band he was in. Whenever he said to me, I thought he said Lester Bennington, and then I realised no, it's Chester Bennington. And then I was thinking, who was he? Like, what band was it? And then I said Papa Roach, and he said no, it was Linkin Park. And I realised, okay, yes, this is pretty cool. And that was quite a crazy moment for me, and he was connected to me for quite some time, and there was some very, very profound moments that formed part of that. Now, the challenge whenever you're at the start of your spiritual journey and you're starting to connect in with people like that is that you start to question your sanity again. Is this your conscious mind? Have you recently listened to Linkin Park, or have you, done something which has made you want to connect with them? But the honest answer is that Patrick Swayze, yes, I had made that conscious effort, but out of everybody in the world, there was nobody more surprised than me whenever Chester Bennington connected in with me. I was never really a Linkin Park fan. Yes, there was songs of theirs that I liked from, years ago, but I was never a fan of theirs. I didn't really know anything about him as a person. I can remember that he had died, but that was it, really. So whenever I started to develop that connection with him, in order to help me validate that, he was giving me information about himself. I kept saying to him, okay, so what can you tell me that can help me validate this connection? And he would have told me things about him that I wouldn't have known, but I was able to Google and sort of dig about and uncover in order to validate. But there was also things as well that he was able to give me about things that were coming up very soon with friends and family members, or things that were going to be in the press. And that was very, very helpful in terms of reaffirming the connection, because whenever you are developing as a medium, or whenever you're developing your intuition or developing as a psychic, one of the things is being able to know when it's you, when it's your own mind, when it's your own thoughts or your own imagination in some cases, versus when it's spirit. And that is a challenge. And that is a challenge that I had. So, people seeing me now and where I'm at, thinking, oh, like she's just a natural. She's always had this gift. It comes so easy to her. I had to work very, very hard for that. And I had to overcome a lot of hurdles in regards to my confidence and also my competence. There are definitely times when I have not been accurate, and I would really question anybody who says as a psychic medium or an intuitive that they are 100% accurate. It's just not possible. We are human. We are human. And we are also we're receiving information that is very broken. It's really like pidgin English. You are communicating with somebody and communicating with a realm where it's not fully fledged conversation. There's let me just catch my words. Um, ambiguities whenever you're having conversation, whenever I ask a question, even whenever they give me information, they've meant it in, one way, and I have, taken it another way. So there's a lot of things like that that we really have to deal with on our path. And receiving information and thinking, oh, what if I'm inaccurate here and I give this person and it shatters their lives. There's been times whenever I've received very, very sensitive messages, and I do talk about this particular one a lot. It was one of the most profound ones really on my path. One of the services that I offer are email readings, where it's just one question and somebody can ask a question. And there was a girl, or a lady, I should say, who was asking when she was going to get pregnant, and I was being told that she wasn't going to get pregnant. And of course, you have to take pause and really think about what you're going to respond at that stage, because this person is coming to you, and you're just about to shatter their dreams potentially. So you really have to think to yourself, gosh, am I certain? Am I really sure that what I'm giving here is an accurate message? And I had sat on it, and I had definitely established, I had asked Spirit, a number of different ways to try and really double check the information that I was giving. And I had said to her, I'm sorry, but I'm not seeing you getting pregnant. I'm seeing that there is some sort of underlying issue there that hasn't been diagnosed. I was actually being told at that time that she wouldn't be shocked to hear that she wouldn't be getting pregnant. Now, whenever she responded, it actually turned out that she was shocked. She had just had a reading from another two psychics, and one had said she would be pregnant within the next month, and another one said pregnant within the next 3 months. However, she had been trying for a number of years at that stage. So she was aware that there was something not right, but had still hope that, it's going to happen soon. And she was over in the US, and she had her bloods checked. Her husband had his sperm checked, and there was no problems. But I was being told that there was something else. So first of all, I obviously read her response, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm wrong. That was another two psychics have given her similar information. I'm wrong. So immediately I was questioning myself. And whenever I question myself, or whenever I start to lose my confidence, my connection dips. So that is, it's the confidence is a really important thing. If we're not confident, it can start to block our connection and block that information coming in, because we start to get all anxious and worked up, and we really need to be in a very, very calm state. So I've had a lot of things like that where I've really questioned myself, because Spirit have been training me all this time in order to make sure that I'm confident, I'm accurate, and I'm not going to lose that connection. So that was very, very important. Now I sat on that, and I went in with it different ways, and I said, look, I am being told that there is something underlying that is preventing you from having children, that there is something preventing you from getting pregnant. I was being told that it was her reproductive system. There was something there that needed to be addressed. There was something that needed to be looked at closer, and that she would have a clearer view in the next 6 months of where she was with things. And this was all on email, and I still have the email now. And she actually, I don't think I heard from her. Now it was definitely in my mind quite a lot, because I was very curious to know what has happened with this, what has happened with this lady. And was I right? Was I wrong? And it was from a selfish perspective. It definitely was, without a doubt. It was more from a selfish perspective. I wanted the validation. I wanted to know, was I right? Was I wrong? And I did think on a few occasions, should I message her? Should I email her? And I thought, no, that is completely not appropriate. I cannot do that. And I just had an email come in one day, and I looked in my inbox and I started to read it, and I hadn't even realized who it was from. I just said, oh, it was 6 months. It was coming up on 6 months practically to the day when you give me my last reading. And she actually, I realized who it was. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's let me know. Unfortunately, she actually had something where she had endometriosis. She'd actually went in for another surgery. Okay, so she was having something else explored, and she was seeing a gastro doctor, and she had a surgery which actually uncovered that she had endometriosis in her womb, and her womb had fused onto, it was either her intestine or her bowel, and it was all leaning on her fallopian tube. So her fallopian tube was blocked as well. So there was quite a few different things that were actually going on there that were preventing pregnancy that she didn't know about, that weren't showing up on a blood test. And that was one of my most mind-blowing moments in the early part of my career, which really made me think, wow, I really am not crazy. And it took that in order for it to help me really see that. And on the other hand, I have had times when I've been like, yes, I'm certain, I'm completely accurate. And Spirit have used that as an opportunity to bring me back down to earth with a bump, because like anybody, I do have an ego. We still have egos. So it's really important for me to be aware that I remain grounded and keep my ego in check, and realize that I am imperfect, that I can be inaccurate, and I'm not going to get everything spot on, and I need to really work from my heart and do things for the right reasons, rather than chasing opportunities or cash. I don't want to end up going down the path that some might go down as a charlatan, or trying to raise themselves above others, and thinking, getting a god complex or anything like that. And that's very, very important to me, but it definitely takes some lessons on occasion in order to make sure that you're walking the right path. But that just gives you a bit of an idea of where I have come from, and the hurdles that I have had to jump over in order to build myself up. And it's been a great journey. There's definitely been challenges there, there's been hurdles there, but it has all helped me become much stronger and much happier. as I've been developing my gift, I've been healing along the way. And I didn't even realize that I had so much healing to do. When I think back to my life before, I really thought to myself, I'm fine. I'm in a really good place. I am happy. I didn't realize that I was unhappy. I thought I was unhappy with the world around me. I hadn't realized that I was unhappy with myself. And that's one of the big, profound things that has come from me. And I definitely have found that as I have healed, it has helped me strengthen my connection and have a stronger connection. And as my path has progressed, my connection just has got stronger and stronger. I have very, very clear visions now with spirit. I also have a very clear hearing. I get full sentences sometimes. It's amazing. It's like it blows my mind to be able to get that, and how I receive information. It is so clear. And yes, I'm still very open to the fact that, Gemma, you're not 100% accurate. You're not, you're not above God. You're human. You're still making mistakes. But the level of connection I have now, I'm eternally grateful for to be on this journey and for to be able to walk this path. And I still feel just so privileged whenever somebody comes to me and says, "Oh, like, Gemma, that was amazing. Your reading was accurate. Well, you told me this and this, this came true." It was funny today. I had really, one of my clients is a producer, Hollywood producer. And I didn't know that it was necessarily the big blockbusters that she was involved with. But I knew that she was in the movie business. And actually today was a really profound moment because we had a reading and she'd been to me before. And she actually read back on her notes from the last time, and she says, you told me that it was going to be in the last quarter of this year that this would happen, and it just happened yesterday. And it's the 8th of November whenever I'm recording this. So, it just, things like that. And I'm just like, wow, it's like crazy, to be able to get that information and to be able to pass that on and help people on their path, but also help them have confidence that this is all real as well. It's just absolutely incredible to be a part of that journey. And I do pinch myself, maybe not as often as I did at the start, because every little moment was a bit like, oh my God, everything that happened was so amazing. But, I'm still amazed, but I'm a bit more grounded with it now. It doesn't send me off doolally every time I, get an accurate prediction, or every time somebody comes back after a reading singing my praises. I'm definitely a lot more grounded with it by now, but I still have a very, very deep appreciation for the work that I do. And it's brought me to this point. I've had to work very, very hard. I have had to work very, very hard. It's not come easy, and it's not necessarily been handed to me on a silver platter either. And yes, I've had a lot of support from the universe, but I think that that's testament as well to the fact that if we set our minds to something, the universe will move mountains in order to accommodate us and to help us. And I really had set my mind to this, and I had worked very hard to really develop my connection. I had the cards barely out of my hand. I think for the first year, I had my cards in my hand every day. So that's diligence. That is dedication. And I was very, very focused on my development and working hard and doing practice readings and pushing myself into uncomfortable positions and pushing myself into periods where I was really testing my confidence. If I wasn't confident, I was doing it anyway, and I knew that my confidence would grow because I've got that determination. It's like whenever I recently went back to horse riding, and I hadn't ridden a horse from I was a teenager, and I would have ridden a lot whenever I was younger. I really enjoyed riding, and I was very, very confident, and so it's not like I was coming, I guess, back as a beginner, but I was petrified. I was absolutely petrified of getting on a horse, and I did it. And I managed to do it, and I achieved it, and now I'm absolutely loving it, and it's just coming together so amazingly well. So I know that whenever I put myself into situations where it's outside of my comfort zone, but I have the determination that I will be able to push past that regardless. So I hope that you have enjoyed, I suppose, a bit of my journey so far. There's so much that I could talk about, but I think that it's really important for people to realize that they can do this too. So if you're sitting thinking to yourself, oh, well, I'm not gifted, but I'm really curious about this stuff, there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't develop. And you may not necessarily have the same gift as me in terms of your clairaudience and your clairvoyance, but everybody will develop in their own way. So there's no reason why you couldn't develop and focus on developing a spiritual gift. So keep that in mind. If you want to develop, push yourself. It depends how much you want it. It's a matter of priorities, isn't it? I really had wanted to get back on the horse. I had really wanted to walk this path. I had wanted to develop myself. So, if it's your priority, then, the universe will support you, without a doubt. I know that they'll support you in some shape or form. You just need to really stick at it and be diligent and be prepared to deal with the backlash that might come from it, the rejections, the getting things wrong, the ridicule, perhaps, if you have people around you that might ridicule you. All of those things we have to get used to. And it is just a bit of a period of building up a thicker skin. And eventually, whenever those things come at you, you'll not be fazed and you'll just continue on regardless. And it's just it's the most magical thing that I have ever experienced in my life, without a doubt. Absolutely incredibly magical. And I wouldn't change my path for the world. However, it definitely was not the path that I thought that I was going to be on. However, I love it and I wouldn't want to change it. Definitely not. Onwards and upwards. But thank you so much for listening today. And thank you for following me. Thanks for connecting in with me. And I just hope that this has given you some inspiration, either to believe a little bit harder or that you too can have a connection with spirit. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you're able to, please rate the show or leave feedback on your chosen podcast player. You can also visit the podcast website. Simply head across to thehappypsychic.show, and you can also find me on the socials by searching for @Gemma Lonsdale Guru.